Waithlam Farun Falsha Huriv Ahandana Hig and Okaid Kellerha Shaw and you. My name is Gabriel Nagir and I am on the academic staff at St Mary's University College in Belfast, and currently I am one of the co-chairs of SCoTENS, along with my colleague Dr. Maria Campbell, whom you will meet shortly. You will also have the opportunity to get to meet some members of the SCoTENS committee and Tricia Kelly from the Centre for Cross-Border Studies. We're indebted to the Centre for Cross-Border Studies and also indeed to the Departments of Education, North and South, for their very positive and enthusiastic support to SCoTENS. I would like to welcome you to this virtual event when we celebrate the efforts and the success of the SCoTENS community in the field of research. In case you're in any doubt, when I refer to the SCoTENS community, that's you. Professionals involved in teacher education. SCoTENS is driven by a vision for teacher education that is informed by research. The seed funding project is one of the mainstays of the service provided by SCoTENS to the educational community right across the island. A key aspect of that is the partnerships and collaborations that emerge and grow during work on the seed-funded projects. The development of professional relationships and friendships is not bound by borders, and so SCoTENS actively encourages projects that demonstrate a sharing of expertise and a sharing of learning. SCoTENS approaches its 20th year, and the support for research projects is one of the three main activities that has developed throughout those years and continues to grow. Support extends beyond funding to get a research project past that embryonic stage and producing outcomes that can improve the work of teachers and the experience of pupils. I'm sure we'll get insights into those other ways in which participation in the projects is rewarding and beneficial when we listen to some of the researchers involved in current and recently completed projects in just a moment. I'm confident that the importance of meaningful, positive professional relationships will be prominent among those advantages. We hope that anyone considering making an application to the current round of seed funding will find this afternoon's event helpful. So today we are delighted to have 6 researchers from seed-funded projects here to share their experience with you. My colleague Noel Purdy, who was in the role of chairperson when many of the projects got started, he will introduce our speakers. Following those brief presentations, Maria will introduce our special guest, Professor Linda Clark, to launch the annual report. Following that, the successful recipients of the John Coonahan Award will be announced. And around 3 o'clock, we will spend some time hearing and answering questions relating to the seed funding applications. Dr. Maria Campbell, co-chair of SCoTENS, will bring the event to a close. So that's our plan for today. And at this point, I invite my colleague, Noel Purdy, to introduce the first session in today's program.
Thanks very much, Gabriel, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as Gabriel has said, the research seed funding is one of the core elements of what we do in SCoTENS, and in fact have been doing for almost 20 years, since 2003. And there have been well over 100, I think it must be around 150 projects, collaborations, which have been funded over that time. And a tremendous range of themes and methodologies and outcomes and partners and institutions have been involved over that period of time. So this afternoon, following the success of last year's webinar, where we did something similar, we thought we would invite another group of researchers to talk about their experiences. So we have 6 researchers lined up and in order, hopefully, and I'm going to ask each of them in turn just to speak for, well, I think we officially said 3 to 4 minutes. We could probably run to 5 minutes, but this is not the opportunity to tell us and to deliver a lecture on your entire findings. Otherwise, we'll be here till Christmas. But for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, if you could tell us a little bit just about what who you were working with, what your project was about, maybe summarize the collaborative activities that were facilitated by the funding. And then I think importantly, and I think we all enjoyed this last year, what were the most significant personal and professional learning gains as a result of the collaboration? So that's a really key outcome for us. It's very much in the spirit of SCoTENS about North-South collaboration. What were the significant personal and professional learning gains for you from the collaboration? So we have six speakers this afternoon, 3 from the North, 3 from the South. And up first is Dr. Melanie McGinn, who's from Marino Institute of Education. And I'm going to invite Melanie now to tell us about her experience of SCoTENS and seed funding projects. Over to you, Melanie. Thank you.
Okay, Gormagat Noel. So Dave, I'm delighted to be joining you here this afternoon. And I'm here as part of a SCoTENS Shared Island Initiative project that my colleague, Dr. Julie Huchtela, who's also here with us in Marino, is on the research team, Julie Hamilton and Damien Knight from St. Mary's University College in Belfast. So we're really excited. We were very excited to actually get awarded for the project in the first instance, because we saw in the application for it, something different and something, that we could do something a little bit different with. So Noel has kind of said there, in terms of, not to obviously overdo the findings. So we're really in the middle of the project. So we're at a different stage on that. So what I suppose the project is called Shared, okay? And as I said at the outset, it's part of the Shared Island Initiative projects that were awarded in December. The Taoiseach Micheál Martin announced those, and we were delighted to be involved in it. It's a collaborative between ourselves and St. Mary's University College Belfast, and we have an international research advisory team working with us, collaborating with us. Professor Michael Shevlin, Professor Colette Murphy, Heather Pugachay, Jean Weir, Jackie Bovine from Bridgewater State University in the States, and Catherine Will from Maine. And we also have probably the most important member of our team overall. We have a fabulous research assistant working with us, Tandeep Kaur. And Tandeep has worked with us previously on the Deepen project, and she's currently in the middle of her PhD in DCU. I suppose in terms of as we advance into the project, our research assistant is keeping us together and keeping us on track, and she pulls us back from time to time when we get overly excited or we want to do things that might not be possible to do. So our project really, basically it's an action research project that we have, and it includes both the research team as the primary researchers and our student teachers who are out on placement. So we were keen to work with student teachers whilst on placement with the lesson planning and the teaching they were actually doing on placement, teaching through a social justice lens. And the placements are running over a time span from February right up to May. So we have student teachers from St. Mary's University College Belfast and student teachers from Marino on different placement blocks in the north and in the south. So it's like a wheel that just keeps turning, and it'll keep turning hopefully until May. And each of the student teachers picked 2 lessons, okay, from 2 different curriculum areas that we've asked them to teach using a social justice lens, okay. And basically our aim is, to enhance their understanding of educational attainment and achievement, and also to get them to focus on links between the family and the school and community, and how those impact on children's educational outcomes, as they go through their primary schooling onto post-primary, and thereafter onto university or onto life or onto work as they do. so the primary researchers are the research team, and then the student teachers become researchers in that we ask them to conduct 2 small focus groups with the children using visual methodologies. So we're getting them to, the children will sketch and draw some artifacts for us, again under the theme of social justice, and obviously focusing on you know, things that are fair, gender, aspirations, career, things like that. And those will then be, they'll form one of our data sets. The student teachers will also produce some visual artifacts of the classroom settings that they're in, and we'll combine those into it as well. And we also will have focus groups with the student teachers. So that's why we need a research assistant, because we've got a lot of data sets. But fundamentally, it's a very simple approach. It's the lesson planning that the students are doing whilst on placement already. It's looking at social justice, you know, and in terms of where we find ourselves now with situation in Russia and Ukraine, what better time to be teaching and to be focusing on social justice, you know, and how we can empower children through our student teachers to build a skill set around that. We intend to use a Brown and Clark framework for our analysis, you know, to break down, doing a thematic analysis on that. And by July, we will hopefully have, you know, the main part of that underway. It is underway at the moment. We're at the opening stages because all the school placements are staged as they go out. In terms of the interest from student teachers, you know, we're kind of overwhelmed with the fact they are very interested in it, and we now are able to get out into schools ourselves on school placement visits, and we can see how things are happening and how they're actually teaching. And it's a really, you know, welcome thing after 2 years to be able to get out there and see it in action as well. So in terms of the personal and professional learning, we're not there yet, Noel, because we're just at the point we're at. But what we can say is that we're really encouraged by the creativity, you know, that we've seen at this very early stage of it. We had some sessions with the students already. We did some sociology sessions with them. We did some research methods with them. We have a little repository there for them. So it's early stages really in terms of where the project is at, but we're really hopeful that we will see an all-island approach with this, and SCoTENS has enabled us to do this. So we're very, very grateful to have gotten the opportunity to take part. You know, it's just so nice to be able to work with our colleagues in St Mary's College, University College in Belfast, but also to see and work with the student teachers in the 2 jurisdictions. So I think I'm probably close to the time there, Noel, so I leave it at that for now. Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Melanie. And it's a really exciting project. We were absolutely delighted, as I think Gabriel hinted at the start, to have that partnership with the Shared Island unit this year, and to be able to offer the sort of extended competition, if you like, for the larger projects. So fascinating project, and my goodness, how timely it is at the moment. So thank you, Melanie, for starting us off. And I'm delighted now to move, I was going to say north of the border, but actually Glenda's down south today, I think in Dublin, zooming in from Dublin. But Glenda is a colleague of mine from Stranraer University College. And Glenda was another of our recipients of the Shared Island SCoTENS funding this year. But I'm pretty sure Glenda's had previous funding from SCoTENS, so you may wish to talk about that as well. So over to you, Glenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Noel. I have a little presentation prepared, so I'll try to share my screen at the minute just to keep me focused, so bear with me. Okay, so can you see that okay?
Yeah, that's come through,
yeah, super. So as Noel said, yes, we were delighted to have been one of the projects who were awarded the SCoTENS Shared Island funding as well. And the title of our project is the Buddies Project. And the more expansive title is Building Bridges, Diminishing Educational Disadvantage, Examining the Role of Homeschool Community Liaison Across the Island of Ireland. And the research team then. Okay, so yes, there's Stranraer is involved alongside University College Dublin, and also then Marino Institute of Education. At Stranraer, I'm heading up the team, but I'm delighted to have a fabulous team of experts who's working alongside me. Dr. Jill Dunn, Dr. Ken Gibson, and Dr. Karen Orr. Then from UCD with Dr. Shanine Sloan, and then from Marino, Dr. Cliona Martin. And we bring with us a range of expertise. My own expertise is very much in the early years of education, whilst Jill Dunn is very much primary focused in that respect, and she has also done a lot of work in that field of parenting before. Ken Gibson is one of our directors at Stranwellis for student support, but he also brings with him a post-primary perspective. And then Karen Orr, our research fellow, is very much focused in on the whole sort of mixed methods approach. Shanine Sloan, again, has done a lot of work in that field of homeschool liaison, and again brings with her real expertise in the field of methodology. And then Cliona Martin has been a homeschool liaison officer herself. She's also been a primary principal, and now she's an academic up in Marino. So a lot of expertise there, which is very relevant to a project on homeschool liaison, the bodies in that respect. So what is our overarching aim? We want to understand the role and potential of homeschool community liaison in terms of addressing educational disadvantage across the island of Ireland from a policy, practice and research perspective. So we want to explore the implementation and administration of homeschool liaison officers across the island of Ireland. We want to gather evidence of how they actually operate in practice. And then, of course, the key learning in that respect about the shared learning across the island of Ireland in that respect to inform both policy and practice. And here we have our research questions. And again, to what extent are homeschool community liaison officers employed in schools across the island of Ireland? And we're thinking of schools right from preschool, primary and post-primary in that respect. We want also to examine how the homeschool community liaison officer operates in practice, how the role is perceived by the school community, the perceived benefits, outcomes, barriers and challenges, and then how do practice and perceptions differ between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. In that sense, what can we learn from one another? And we have used a mixed methods approach in that sense. The phase one very much focuses in on that policy-driven scoping review. And maybe I forgot to mention within our team, probably the most important person within that team being Dr. Franca Winter, who is our research assistant, who has been doing great work in this field for us already, looking at policy and guidance on homeschool community relations in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland likewise, and then also addressing that international research evidence. And then our more phase two then is around our in-depth qualitative case studies. And we're hoping to tune into 6 schools who use a homeschool community liaison officer, or up in the north, referred to more so as a parent officer, 3 in Northern Ireland, 1 being in preschool, 1 in primary, 1 in post-primary, and likewise in the Republic of Ireland. And then we hope to use a range of interviews, focus groups, observations, etc., with an array of different stakeholders, teachers, school leaders, community liaison officers themselves, parents, pupils, and of course, our policymakers. And then more recently, as a result of our advisory team, we have learned that perhaps we need something to join up those 2 phases in that respect, and to look at that very high level, those high level questions around homeschool community liaison that perhaps aren't detailed in the policy documentation, and perhaps we mightn't get from our more qualitative work. And so we're engaging Present, and Shanine's leading on this, in putting together an online survey for schools with a particular focus on principals. So then, what are all the collaborative activities that we have planned in that sense for our project? Well, first and foremostly, as I've already outlined, our team of experts include representation from right across the island of Ireland. We also hope that each partner will witness practice beyond that of their own jurisdiction and have the opportunity to share best practice and inform relevant policies in each context. In terms of our qualitative data collection, it will be undertaken by a team member, one from the north and one from the south, for each and every setting. We want to present the findings by means of a shared learning stakeholder event in both contexts to policymakers, our education inspectorate, etc., as a means of tackling educational disadvantage. We also hope to share the findings with parents by means of a short newsletter in both contexts, and not forgetting about the children either, perhaps a short comic strip or a short story format. And also, again, as a result of our advisory group meeting, we also hope to get the opportunity to bring the homeschool liaison officers north and south of the border together for a shared learning event about best practice, where they too can have the opportunity to meet and learn from each other. And like our last speaker, our personal and professional learning, of course, hasn't happened because we're right in the middle of doing this at the minute. But we have outlined what we would hope that professional learning to entail here. So valuable insight into the role of homeschool community liaison, highlighting examples of best practice and exploring issues around implementation and perceived benefits, barriers and challenges. So learning more about the homeschool liaison officer, him or herself, expanding knowledge and understanding across the full educational spectrum, both north and south of the border. So looking at how preschool might differ from primary, in terms might differ from post-primary. And then shared learning across the island, where each partner can witness practice beyond that of their own. So that professional learning, but getting the insight into what's going on, a northern partner going down into the south, and likewise a southern partner coming up into our northern schools. And then personal learning, well, getting the opportunity to lead a cross-border research team. As Noel alluded, I had the opportunity of working on a smaller seed-funded project, Playful Learning Across Ireland, a number of years ago with Jacqueline Fallon from down south, who at that time was working in DCU, but has since moved into NCCA in that respect. But there was just the two of us working on this project, where this time around I'm getting the opportunity to lead a more extensive team in that respect. Also getting the opportunity to work with our expert advisor, Professor Colleen McLaughlin, formerly from Cambridge University, and then a real expert advisory team likewise. Then gleaning those partnerships and relationships with each other as researchers, but also with our schools, our principals, homeschool liaison officers and practitioners across the island of Ireland, and developing those research partnerships also north and south of the border. So I must admit, I'm extremely excited about this. As I say, we're making our way through it. And like the last speaker, we hope to have most of the data gleaned by June time, and then writing up then over the summer period to have everything ready then for October. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks very much, Glenda. And we're going to move on at another fascinating project. Really looking forward to reading the findings of that and hearing more about it, hopefully at our SCoTENS conference later in the year. We're going to continue our tour of Ireland now. We're going to head to the southwest, to Limerick, and to Dr. TJ O'Callaghan, who is the Director of Taught Postgraduate Studies in Education at Mary Immaculate. TJ, it's great to see you this afternoon, and we're looking forward to 3 or 4 minutes of your experiences of seed funding projects. Thanks very much.
Gur míle mágad, agus tá sé go háil ar fad a bheith libh tróna, chun túris chun dáta rointear may learn tunscail atá idir lámh ginge. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share our report on our ongoing research. I'm working in collaboration with Dr. Gabriel Nikier, St. Mary's University College Belfast, and both of us have extensive experience in immersion teacher education, from initial teacher education to professional development to lifelong learning. So it is no surprise then that this project hones in this area. And the title of our project is Developing Teacher and Leadership Capacity in Irish Medium Education, an analysis of immersion-specific competencies. So scholars argue that immersion teaching, distinct from traditional content or language teaching, requires a particular knowledge base and pedagogical skill set. However, to date, few research-validated research reference tools identify these immersion-specific competencies demanded by the educational setting. So this research sets out to do just that, to identify research-validated reference tools regarding the immersion-specific competencies demanded by the immersion setting. So the aim of this piece of research is to identify this ideal knowledge base. What exactly are these additional competencies or skills demanded by the immersion context, where teachers teach content through language and where teachers teach language through content, to a group of students who are also learning that language of instruction. So what exactly are these distinctive professional competencies that are considered essential to a teacher in this type of setting, north and south? And also, we wish to provide examples of these distinctive professional competencies in practice and how they manifest in practice. So this is this is ongoing research, but we are really interested in getting every stakeholder's perspectives, all stakeholders' perspectives, ranging from student teachers in initial teacher education to practicing teachers at primary and post-primary, to principal teachers at primary and post-primary, and also to initial teacher education providers. So the research is underway at the moment. We have already engaged in focus group interviews with initial teacher education students in the north and in the south. We've already conducted 8 semi-structured interviews with primary and post-primary teachers from a variety of immersion contexts, 4 from the north and 2 from and 4 from the south. And our next steps is to engage with principals, both north and south, in the form of a focus group to unearth their understandings of these key additional competencies demanded by the immersion context. So what we hope to achieve by doing this is really to craft this immersion-specific research-validated reference tool, but however, also to provide an evidence-based stimulus to inform decisions in relation to targeted strategy and meaningful professional development, and indeed initial teacher education, provision, practices, and policies. And this research is really timely, and because it is a really exciting time for immersion education, both north and south. A lot of curricular reforms, a lot of work going on with the both teaching councils, and also with regards to policy development. So the timing of this piece of research is absolutely on track. So with regards to this is ongoing, as I said, just like the previous presenters also, but both Gabriel and I, and I'm sure Gabriel will agree that this has been a very enriching experience to date, and a very motivating experience to engage and network and broker and facilitate relationships between colleagues north and south to arrive at that shared understanding and contribute towards achieving language immersion goals. So again, arriving at that shared ambition and that agreed understanding of what these key competencies are and how they manifest in practice. And also the enriching part of this has been the interprofessional and interinstitutional linkages, and having the opportunity to engage in a piece of research with an end goal in mind of advancing the field north and south, and these mutually informing practices both north and south to build a bigger and brighter future for Irish medium immersion education. Also, I suppose it's very motivating to hear the multiple voices and the different perspectives, and how they view ideal professional development, which could be tailored to their unique needs in the context north and south. So really leading to a shared learning and shared resources on the island of Ireland. So again, this has been a motivating experience. It has been a learning journey for both Gabriel and I, and it has been a pleasure to work with the research participants in unearthing the understandings and perspectives of what that ideal knowledge base for the immersion educator of tomorrow is like. So Gurmila Magav.
Thanks very much, TJ. And you can see already from the three presenters just the diversity of theme of research that SCoTENS has funded in recent years. I'm now going to move east, I think, from Limerick or northeast towards Dublin, or is it even further north towards the sunlit uplands of County Derry, where Conor comes from. Dr. Conor McGuckin from Trinity College Dublin has been involved in numerous SCoTENS projects over the years, and that I think is a testament as well to the attraction of working with SCoTENS and the North-South partnership, that people do come back and they apply again. They're not always successful, but they apply again and again for funding, and we're delighted that some people are successful on more than one occasion. So without further ado, over to Conor. Thanks.
Thanks, Noel, and hello everyone. And I guess, Noel, you could say it's just because I'm getting older, or maybe that every day is a school day. But you're right. It's not my first time at the dance, and you know, I've been very fortunate. I'm on my fourth learning experience, and I say that it's not a research project, it's a learning experience that's been funded, and I think even more so than being funded, it's been supported and respected by SCoTENS, and I think they're really critical words that I'm saying there. The current project, if I was to go in reverse order of the four projects and offer sort of what we've been doing and maybe some of my own reflections on where we've been and where we're at, the current project is called STAND, and it stands for Standing Together for Autism and Neurodevelopmental Difference. The PI is Caroline O'Sheeron in Hibernia College, and we're very fortunate we're partnered by Jessica Bates and Una O'Connor Bones from Ulster, Neil Kenny in DCU, and Craig Goodall up in St Mary's in Belfast. And really this is a project based in special schools in both jurisdictions. And we're interested in, I suppose, the support that's been extended to families and with families within that. And I think something that we've all learned through COVID is that COVID hasn't really identified a whole lot of new issues. It's really been a lot of issues that we all knew were there, that were sort of latent in the system. And now other people are sort of paying attention to them as well. So we're looking at that because a lot of families that are involved here are always in crisis. And it's not just whenever COVID or something like that happens. So we're in the middle of the field work for that at the moment. And we're fortunate we were able to get some other funding from the National Gallery of Ireland. And we're able to offer participants the opportunity to create an artifact as part of the research that we're doing. So that's a nice project, and we're in the middle of that one at the minute. Previous one that we did, and what I've always liked about SCoTENS is we've always been able to output very nice publications as well. And this is one from previous about bereavement, separation, and divorce. And I suppose the initial part of this came out of the principal investigator, Aoife Lynham from Hibernia College. When Aoife was doing her doctoral research, it was all about the issue of normal or normative bereavement within schools, because we always have critical incidence policies, but there's no policies or attention really to the normal everyday issues that were going on. And when she was doing the research, she was picking up that a lot of that grief and mourning and loss was also really in relation to separation and divorce issues. And very similar to kind of findings that myself and Noel have obtained in the projects that we were doing, you know, nearly half of the participants, North and South, were saying that they've had direct experience of having to deal with this, but not having the confidence, not having the tools, not having had the input in their initial teacher education, very little in terms of ongoing education. And regrettably and unfortunately, the key response has been to deal with it on their own initiative, based on their own experiences. And as we all know, if you're doing that and you don't have policies and you don't have the support, you know, the potential to re-traumatize yourself for other issues to arise. So that was a particularly interesting one, and no different from the projects that I've worked on with Noel. Huge amount of traction in terms of dissemination and outputs that we've been able to do with that. And again, it's opened up a lot more work with Barbara McConnell in Stranmillis, who's also part of that project. So it gives a lot of food for thought in terms of the depth of what we were looking at. And it would be remiss of me not to really mention the two significant projects that myself and Noel got to work on. It was almost like a blind date at, I think it was at Malahide, Noel, about 10 or 11 years ago. Barbara McConnell brought us together, introduced us, and then walked away and left us to it. And 11 years later, we're still together, happily researching and doing things together. And we had two very, very successful projects in terms of what we did. The first one was sort of bringing together, I suppose, the areas of, I suppose, bullying and victimization, and bringing together special educational needs and disability. And we sort of said, look, if we put our two hands together, it's sort of disablest bullying. So we were looking at, you know, initial teacher education, north and south. And it was really interesting because in terms of bullying approaches, they were saying, look, we're very good with this. We understand this, no problem. In terms of special ed, yes, we've had all of this education, no problem. But whenever we asked them to think on their feet, what would happen if those two sort of areas collided, they were really, really at sea. And I think the significant thing always stands to me, Noel, was that over a third of the participants said that they would deal with these incidences with natural instinct. We were saying, what about the policy? What about support? What about colleagues? Why should it be natural instinct? And, you know, it led to, obviously, we had another nice publication like this, supported by SCoTENS. We had national conference presentations, international conference presentations, British publications, British Journal, European journal publications. And we had so many outputs from this, Noel. And I think that was the same for the other project that we did, which was about cyberbullying in terms of policy and the law, north and south. And I can remember it still to this day, the experiences of sitting in the classroom, I think up north, Noel, and we were sitting and we had a senior counsel with us, and some of the learning that took place there, some of the sharing of experiences that were there. And again, led to so many outputs. And I think one of the most significant outputs from that one was, I think, Noel, you were able to represent these findings in terms of impact, in terms of the Northern Ireland Anti-Bullying Forum, and presenting that to the Northern Ireland Assembly as well. So that's 4 projects. And if I was honest, my CV has had huge impact from the projects, but I think at a very personal and professional level, that's where I see the significance of the SCoTENS. And I suppose those opportunities to work with Noel, with Barbara, with other colleagues, but particularly the ongoing relationship I've been able to build with Noel in terms of projects, sharing some teaching, sharing experiences. We're both from the north, both from 2 different traditions, really shouldn't have had so much interaction together. But, you know, I've developed a very deep personal relationship through the SCoTENS to I suppose, Noel and the research and thinking, being from the north, but now being in the south. And I think, you know, Gabriel, that's what you were saying, that the deeper issues here. And if I could just take a few seconds just to finish, I think we still have a challenge for some of the projects, but Noel, I think me and you still have a challenge that I think when we do it and looking at the initial teacher education, north and south, we find the findings, we publish the findings, and because of the focus in the universities, we move on to the next project where we don't get to follow through properly in terms of how did it land, how did it impact, how did we assess that, how did we measure that, and thinking about the SDGs. So maybe, Noel, I'm thinking there's a bit of work for me and you, but maybe a lot of people, to go back to those projects and say, what difference did the projects make? And do we need to revisit them and maybe stoke the issues up again and maybe come back and look at impact and follow up again? So that's my personal experience. As I say, I've been very fortunate to get the learning experience from now 4 projects, and deeply meaningful to me professionally, personally. And if I can be of any support to anyone who would like to apply or talk about any of the projects, I'm more than happy to do that. Thanks, Noel.
Thanks very much, Conor. And I think I need to clarify something about our beautiful friendship over the years since our blind date. I can't remember whether it was Barbara McConnell or who it was, but certainly I think this epitomizes the strength of friendship that emerges through professional relationships and partnership as well, and collaborative projects. So it's been a pleasure as well from my perspective. Time is marching on though, so I am going to move on to our final two speakers. And firstly, Dr. Jennifer Roberts from Queen's University in Belfast. And then finally, we'll move to Dr. Stephen Wilson from Ulster. But first of all, Jennifer, tell us about your experience of SCoTENS, please.
Yes, hello. I suppose my experience of SCoTENS has been one of a series of coincidences that have led me to this research project. I do quite a lot of work internationally and with international schools, and one of the questions that I am always asked, be it in China or Malaysia, is around the transferability of teaching qualifications and how those with an international teaching qualification can use that, or their ability to transfer that to teach within the UK and Ireland. So those conversations were ongoing with a range of international partners. I then started to look at what was available in Northern Ireland. And just by chance, I happened to meet with and be introduced to my partners who are from the Marino Institute of Education. So that's Rory McDade, and he is running a migrant teacher program from the Marino Institute of Education. And that program really began by mapping the teacher workforce in Ireland. It began by looking at the teaching workforce and where they had got their initial teacher education. They have then moved on to kind of create this wonderful migrant teacher program and an accompanying bridging program, which looks at and thinks about making sure that those internationally educated teachers who are arriving in Ireland are able to kind of use their qualification. And that was all absolutely wonderful. But whenever I began to look and see and think about mapping Northern Ireland, what became very clear was that not only did we not have a similar program, but we also didn't have any data around who was here, who the teachers were in our teaching population. We didn't really have any data around where they were educated. And we really didn't have any data about their experience of registration with the General Teaching Council Northern Ireland. So we were very kind of unsure what was available. So we decided that actually the best thing for us to do would be to do a replication kind of their initial mapping work. So they really were, quite a number of years ahead of us. So we were able to begin to look at and think about and see kind of what their mapping study looked like, see how they mapped the teachers that were teaching within their population. We created a similar study for Northern Ireland. And we've kind of put it out now, and we're kind of getting the feedback and getting the responses there. What we're really thinking about in terms of that mapping is to, map and think about the experiences of those who arrive in Northern Ireland with an international teaching qualification. The mapping then, I suppose, in the longer term, we're hoping to have this kind of baseline data on who is teaching in our schools and also who wants to teach in our schools, but also to help increase the participation of immigrant and internationally educated teachers in Northern Ireland, and being able to kind of think about how what they need to support them, what can we do to support them as they move through the process. We're also hoping to kind of have this study and have this kind of notion of a replicated study, but also to match that with focus groups and interviews. So we're aiming to do 2 focus groups of the participants who have arrived, and to kind of think about and share their experiences, but also to have interviews with key stakeholders to begin to kind of round out and triangulate some of the data that we're getting, to begin to think about, well, what are the key issues here? So we haven't, kind of fully organized those yet. That's kind of at the stage we're at, but we're going to look at, for example, managers of early years centres who do employ or underemploy in some cases, those who have been internationally educated as teachers. We're looking to think about those who, have been in that position and kind of some of the key issues there. So really this is for us, and I think that's been the wonderful thing about SCoTENS for us, is that it's allowed us to kind of nearly begin this kind of replication, but also this kind of notion of comparator, so that we already have the data that they've collected, but we're allowed to we're kind of beginning to have that comparison, so that actually our outputs here are going to be both the data that we've had from Northern Ireland, but also the comparison then by some of that data that we have collected or are collecting from the Republic of Ireland. And I think that's going to make a nice kind of seed, you know, a nice seed that hopefully we can continue to grow once we kind of have that data and have that initial initial mapping done as well. Interesting to think about, I suppose, our own professional and personal learning. I found it really enjoyable. I've really enjoyed working with colleagues across, you know, the island of Ireland, leading a research team. We also have a really, you know, a brilliant research assistant here, Sharon Millen, who's doing a lot of that work with me as well. Thinking about that partnership, but also a piece on the kind of shared learning, you know, what have we learned as a kind of shared cohesive group, which I think is really important. And also, I suppose, just leading on from what you're saying there, Noel, about friendship, is that Rory and I, whenever we're meeting, we're constantly thinking about, could we do something else like this? Could we apply for something else based on, you know, so I think those conversations that happen organically that wouldn't necessarily be happening every week or every month, I think are a real benefit here of having that kind of, you know, research team that's quite wide in nature.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. And another really exciting project. We look forward to reading the final report of that in a few months' time as well. Last but not least, Stephen Wilston from Ulster has been waiting very patiently. Stephen is a veteran of a number of projects, I think, as well, through SCoTENS. So, Stephen, I wonder, could you share your experiences just very quickly? Thank you.
Thank you, Noel, and thanks for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. And as you say, I've been very fortunate to have been involved in a number of SCoTENS projects, or as Connor said, learning experiences, which is maybe a better one. I think my first one was 2015, so maybe not that long ago, but regularly since then. So I thought I would reflect on the whole suite of them rather than just a current one. Most of the ones that I've been involved in have been ICT in education, and they've involved a wide range of partners, Pamela Cowan from Queen's and Paul Conway in Limerick and Martin Brown and Joe O'Hara and DCU, Roger Austin from Ulster as well, of course, involved in that. And then as one project leads on to another one, other partners come on board. So for example, Rachel Farrell of UCD joined us then for later work. And the most recent one that we've just completed in virtual reality had a couple of other partners as well. Another one from Ulster, Sammy Taggart, and from DCU and Donlan joined us. So you seem to accrete additional partners as you go along with many of these projects, which is excellent. And they've all at outputs. I mean, Rachel Farrell has just led on a paper published for the virtual reality one, for example, and there's a couple of conference papers ready to go in it as well in upcoming conferences. A little earlier, just as a digression from the ICT work, I was involved with leadership learning in initial teacher education, and it was with a couple different partners altogether. So there was Fiona King from DCU, and then Marjorie Mahan, a good Derry woman, but in University of Glasgow, and Dong Nguyen, also from University of Glasgow, involved in that. So it's almost like a triangular partnership. Can you have triangular partners? I'm not sure, but with three different centres. And again, interesting work. And still we apply. We were delighted just last week to get informed that we were successful in another application. This time it's looking at controversial issues in diverse classrooms, something which I've always felt strongly about in the North. We have a saying in the North, whatever you say nothing. And a lot of teachers follow that. You know, they're not going to go anywhere controversial at all. And I was surprised to sort of learn that in the South, there was a similar sort of issue in terms of increased diversity within classrooms, but actually the diversity was not being addressed really. And so that partnership is going to focus on that. And again, a brand new set of partners. The PI is Trish Kiernan of Mary Immaculate in Limerick, but there's Emer Nolan and her colleagues in Educate Together. There are education and training boards in the South involved in it as well. And the North, We've got myself and Matt Milligan from Ulster in it, and also Cleana Scott Wills from NICE involved in it. So a wider range of partners. But I think that'll be a very interesting one. And I mean, perhaps later, if people want more details of that, I can certainly go into it. But a wide range of different things. In terms of what we've done, in terms of the cross-border activities, I mean, a lot of it has involved movement between north and south and visits to Dublin, particularly for myself, but also over to Glasgow in that triangular one. But also reciprocal visits from colleagues in the south coming north as well. Other speakers have mentioned about the strengths of getting to see another system and getting other people to see your system and get some understanding of it, and visit schools and talk to teachers and talk to pre-service teachers and talk to tutors and so on. A lot of it has been Zoom as well, by Zoom calls, even before Zoom became a commonplace, in terms of preparing paper writing, in terms of collaborative preparation for conferences, preparation for meetings and so on. That sort of professional dialogue is really at the heart of all of those sort of issues and things that we've addressed. In terms of what I've got out of it, I mean, there have been a lot of outputs, actual impact from papers written, from conferences attended, from the spin-offs from conferences attended. There's also been some sort of change in practice as well. For example, the leadership learning experience, to use Connor's phrase, that we were involved in, has been embedded in ITE provision within both Glasgow, DCU and within Ulster. So it's actually changed how we do certain things with pre-service teachers, which I think is an important impact as well. But actually for me, it isn't those that would be the most important gain. What I found through SCoTENS is I've become involved with a whole lot of other researchers, and where our research impacts and our research interests overlap, we've found sort of common ground for research and being able to work together to explore areas, and that sort of development of a wider and wider range of professional contacts, I think, has been extremely valuable, stimulating, and helpful to me in terms of forming insights and informing those relationships which continue to grow. And I've mentioned a lot of names as I went through. I'm sure I probably missed some people out, but you know, the wide range of people that you collide with as your research interests expand, that SCoTENS allows to expand, has been invaluable. And just to finally, it's a spin-off as well from that, because the SCoTENS starts us off, but then there have been papers written together which have nothing to do with SCoTENS through the relationships we've formed, conference papers, applications for more research funding, and so on, that spin off from those professional relationships that SCoTENS has helped develop.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and thank you to all 6 of our speakers this afternoon. I knew you would never stay to 3 or 4 minutes each. There's too much to talk about and too much passion and enthusiasm, so I didn't want to interrupt you, but thank you for that. And you can see there the passion and the enthusiasm for the projects, for the content, but also for the learning experiences, as Connor said, for the relationships, the professional relationships and the friendships which have been engendered as well. So thank you very much for giving up your time to tell us about your work with SCoTENS. At this stage, I'm going to hand over to the Southern co-chair, Dr. Maria Campbell, who's going to take us on to the next stage of the programme. Thank you.
Great, Noel, thanks very much for that. And again, just to say a really warm welcome to everybody who's joining us this afternoon, and that for those of you I haven't met before, I'm Maria Campbell. I'm the Southern co-chair, and I'm from St. Angela's College in Sligo, and delighted that you could join us. Again, also just a huge thank you to the 6 people who presented and who shared their ideas with us. It's wonderful to hear about such exciting research taking place, and SCoTENS is absolutely delighted to be in a position to support you, and also to be in a position, I think, to extend that space where we can learn with and from each other. And again, for those of you who are joining us today, I would strongly, strongly urge you to consider applying for seed funding, if you have or if you haven't before. Moving on to the next part of the meeting. SCoTENS each year produces what we call our annual report, and our annual report details all the activities of SCoTENS. So, for example, about our conferences, our seed funding, student-teacher exchange, and so on. And we normally launch it at our annual conference, which we had a virtual event this year instead. So we're actually launching it today, and all our previous annual reports are up on the website, so you can follow and track and trace the work of SCoTENS. And it gives me absolutely huge pleasure to invite Professor Linda Clark, from Ulster University to launch it. And just to introduce you a little bit to Linda first, Linda joined the staff of Ulster University in 2001 as a lecturer in education, and then from 2009 to 13 was head of school. She was appointed research director in 2016, and Linda has published widely across many areas, including leadership, policy, the place and role of teachers. But Linda holds a very special place in the hearts of all of us in SCoTENS, because Linda was a key member of the SCoTENS committee for many years, and indeed was the co-chair from 2013 to 2016. And that, so Linda, with huge pleasure, I hand it over to you to launch our annual report, please.
Thank you very much, Maria. I barely recognize myself there. It's a pleasure to be invited along to introduce and to launch this report. I think it probably comes up back to front on your screens. Perhaps it doesn't, certainly does on mine. But this is a beautifully presented annual report of SCoTENS. And the beauty is down yet again to the work of the Centre for Cross-Border Studies, who always do a beautiful job on producing our documents. The document lays out in particular the details of our conference last year, which our webinar actually, where the keynote speaker was Professor Neil Selwyn, who joined us from Melbourne. And one of the joys of actually, one of the benefits of the COVID pandemic has been that we've been able to bring in speakers from across the globe. And Neil joined us from Melbourne. Stephen Ball joined us this year, or in October, I should say, as well. And we wouldn't have been able to bring those people from across the world, those most eminent speakers, to provoke us and to prod us into thinking about the work that we're doing. The core of what Neil Selwyn was telling us all the way from Melbourne was really that we need to take the opportunity to be part as academics of the discussion about how education moves forward following the COVID moment, if you like, and how teacher education in particular moves forward. And he was challenging us to be part of those discussions and to engage with it. And to learn the lessons really of the pandemic, what might be changed and how, and what doesn't need changing. And I'm sure you have many colleagues, and I have as well, and I think it myself many a day, who just want to see the back end of Teams and Zoom and really press that leave button and not come back into those virtual environments. But he was challenging us to learn and to be part of a discussion which is bringing in many conversants into education, some of whom haven't really had a prominent role, but their role is increasingly prominent. So the edu businesses, the tech companies, the global thought leaders, if you like, the OCDs, the UNESCOs of this world. And he was challenging us as researchers and academics to make our voices heard, to carry out the research so that there is evidence around what we've learned from teaching and learning in the COVID moment, and to share that evidence, because of course dissemination is an integral part of research, and SCoTENS allows us to do that in our unique organisation working across a contested border. And boy, have borders become even more contested in recent times. But we have shown the world, and Maria and Noel in their preface introduced the paper in which we have shown the world what SCoTENS has done. And I really commend to you the paper in the Oxford Review about the work of SCoTENS. One of the fathers of SCoTENS, John Coulihan, was very, very keen that we tell the world about what we do, about this unique organisation. And it's been a joy to bring in some of the experts from across the world, like Stephen Ball and Neil Selwyn, and tell them about us so that they know about us. And I've heard from various other sources that they have been doing that. They have been mentioning SCoTENS around the planet. So that's been a particular joy. So Neil Selwyn, I suppose, is a key thought leader. And I commend you to either read the transcript, which is in the report, or there is the video if you want to refresh your memory of what we heard during the conference. The video is on our website. And I suppose he made us think really about how we might design our next research project, what questions we might ask, what we might write about in our next paper when we're trying to reflect on what has happened to education and teacher education in particular during COVID, and what lessons we might learn about the ways forward. So I commend this to you really as you write your seed funding bid for SCoTENS to join the wonderful learning experiences, thank you, Connor, of all of our colleagues that were illustrated so brilliantly there. Such diversity of learning experiences that have just been exemplified. So as you sit down to fill in that form, and it really isn't a huge form to fill in for some funding, as you bring your partnership together from across the border, and get your partnerships working together and thinking about who might contribute what questions each person might work on. As you do that, I suppose Neil Selwyn's lecture gives us some ideas and some pointers to some really interesting international connections we might make in that work and taking forward our learnings from the pandemic. And he's emphasizing, as I said, this need to be part of the discussion as academics, as researchers in teacher education, to speak to the edu businesses, to speak to the tech providers, to speak to the OECD and UNESCO, and to be part of those very prominent papers that are out there and very prominent speakers and thought makers. And it's been great to bring in Neil and Stephen Ball in the last 2 years as contacts within SCoTENS and bring them into the SCoTENS family. They know who we are, we know who they are. You know, we can invite them along to be external examiners for our students. They now know where we are. I'm thinking about doing that for one of my PhD students. I would never have done that before. So it's been, I think we've learned a huge amount, but there's a lot more to get from listening to Neil Selwyn. I listened to about 3/4 of it last night and then ran out of time. But there's so much that he can learn and so much that it brings to mind. So it's great that we have the website to get his ideas refreshed in our mind for making our next seed funding bids. Having a look at also at that Oxford Review paper about SCoTENS itself. I commend you this report, and I commend the work of Maria and Noel who put it together, and the Centre for Cross-Border Studies. It's a great credit to SCoTENS and the work that we do. And our efforts to support the wonders of educational research across this island. So thank you for inviting me along. I hope I've done justice to your great report. I really recommend that you have a read online. We used to publish it. I don't know, Maria, if we're actually publishing some of these and giving them out at the conference as well, but it certainly will be available as an online document. And there is a video of the conference there as well. Thank you so much for inviting me back. It's been a joy.
Linda, thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you back again. And yes, we'll have a small number of hard copies as well, but it's available online. So we're going to move on to the next. And Linda, we're keeping you on standby for this. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, to Gabrielle, for really one of, I suppose, a key highlight for us, which is the Coonahan Award. So I'll say the more and pass you over to Gabrielle. I think you're on mute, Gabrielle.
That's the first of the afternoon, isn't it? By presenting an award for seed-funded research in the name of Professor John Coonahan, SCoTENS honours one of its founder members, as Linda referred to him there, as one of the fathers of SCoTENS, and pays tribute to the life and work of a man who influenced educational policy worldwide and, of course, here in Ireland. So there were 3 principles underpinning his work: partnership, equality, and pluralism. And these are espoused by SCoTENS and are reflected in all our endeavours. Professor Coonahan began his own career as a teacher and then was sought for work at higher strategic levels. His was often the voice of reason, and his commitment to promoting cross-border partnerships that ultimately benefit children throughout this island is reflected among the values that we're celebrating today. So there's usually a single recipient of the John Coonahan Award. This year, the committee acknowledges the strengths and qualities of 2 research reports considered to be equally deserving and both aligned to the values of SCoTENS. So it is my pleasure to announce a joint award in the name of John Coonahan to 2 of the partnering teams whose research project was supported by the SCoTENS seed funding scheme. So the successful projects are entitled, firstly, Knowing Your Neighbour, Educating in Multi-Belief Contexts in Northern and Southern Ireland. And the researchers are Aileen Hunter and Jones Irwin from the University of Ulster and DCU. Now, I do have a certificate here that will make its way to you. I cannot, I'll not footer with the shared screen, but perhaps you can, I hold that up long enough for we have evidence of your success, and congratulations. And secondly, the project entitled Contested Childhoods Across Borders and Boundaries. And the authors or researchers, Diane McClelland, Leah O'Toole, Thomas Walsh, Deirdre Ford, Suzanne O'Keefe, Carl Anders Safstrom, and Noel Purdy from the University of Maynooth and Stranmillis University College in Belfast. And again, you will find a certificate will be making its way to you very soon. Yes, if we could all hear ourselves. That's one of the things I missed. Well done. In a moment, I will invite one member of the teams to accept the award on behalf of their partners and to say a few words about their work. But just before that, I would like to thank and commend all the recipients of seed funding in the last year or so who either are still engaged in their collaborative projects or who have completed their work and submitted reports. All the reports are available on the SCoTENS website. So on behalf of Aileen and Jones, I'm not sure who we'd like to say a word or two.
I don't really know what's expected. I'll say hello and thank you very, very much for offering us this award. We were quite shocked when we got the email last week, and it was lovely to receive that notification, and thank you very much for it. The project, it's quite nice to have heard the other reports today because it really does map our experience as well. And SCoTENS is very nurturing and provides a level of freedom that other funding bodies probably don't, in allowing us to grow and follow research interests. And I'm here with 2 of my colleagues who are also geographers, and I'm a geographer and an RE tutor. And I think that's what really came across in our project, was that it's a little bit magpie, and there's lots of little ideas that coalesced into one project at a really significant historical point in time. So we were looking at the introduction of the partition of Ireland, and how the 2 different education systems had diverged and come up with very different solutions to the same issues, and looking at demographic changes between the North and the South, and really these concepts of borders in the mind, which we've talked about a lot today as well, and how we have that cross-border learning and interchange, and actually how little we have of it professionally for in-service teachers. So that was very much what our project was looking at in terms of particularly those who teach in non-faith formation schools, so the ERB schools in the South, and in integrated schools and control schools here in the North, which is an under-researched area. So it became a very huge project. I'm sure Tricia was very, very patient with me in getting the report in, because it kept growing, and because so much information came out of that report. So it's an interesting read if anybody wants to take a look at it. It's lots of different learning that came out of that. So I'll not bore you anymore with it, but it's there if you'd like to have a look. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Aileen. Yeah, it's an absolutely fascinating read. Actually, you're really underplaying it there. It's an interesting read. And I'm not sure who on Diane's team would like to accept the award and to say a word or two.
Leah led up the team, so I'm going to let Leah do that, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Leah.
I'm not sure whether to say thank you or thanks, Diane. I'm only joking. Thanks so much, Diane. It's funny that Diane says that I led up the team, because really from the beginning, I think all of us on the team experienced it as a very collegial kind of a project where each of us felt we had a lead role in it in different ways. And I think that maybe was due to a number of factors. Firstly, well, the friendships that Noel mentioned, that rang very true to me, because I think as a team we got to know each other very well across the course of this project, and those relationships really meant an awful lot to all of us, I think. Speaking for myself, certainly they did, and I feel that, you know, coming towards the end of our project, we all acknowledged that we hoped it was the beginning of something rather than the end. And I think the other reason the project was so interesting was the range of expertise that each of us brought to it. So we had historians, philosophers, psychologists, sociologists, pedagogues. We had people with interest in early childhood education, in primary and post-primary. So really the depth and richness of our project drew on everything that we each brought to it. We were looking at, you know, it sounds quite similar in some ways to what Aidan was discussing there about kind of the divergence post-partition, but particularly with regards to early childhood education. And what we were really interested in was how children were conceived of, how they were conceptualized. The kind of the seed of the idea began when one of our colleagues, Carl Anders, had read an article by Fintan O'Toole that looked at the initial programme for government in the Free State in Ireland, and how it was actually so forward thinking in terms of children's rights, and a lot of the language around agency we didn't see again for nearly 100 years in terms of early childhood education and the way children are conceived of. And yet, as we know, certainly in the South, that potential very often wasn't fulfilled. And in fact, what the article was arguing was that the Free State became a very unhospitable place for children. And we wondered why, and we wondered what had happened north of the border, and how children were conceived of and conceptualized north and south. And what we actually found was that while the circumstances were very different, there were a lot of echoes north and south around the role of children being seen as nation building. And we used a particular framework developed by Soren and Galloway, different kind of constructs of children, and applied them to a variety of different documents. So it was kind of basically documentary analysis that led our finding. It ended with our outcomes really were a paper that we published together in the British Educational Research Journal. And we noted at the time there were 7 authors on that paper. So it kind of is a real reflection of the cogency or the consistency of the team, that we managed to kind of get 7 voices to be heard and not be so completely fractured that it made sense, or at least I hope that's the case. We also had a really successful webinar that was very well attended, and huge thanks in retrospect to our colleagues in Stranmillis who organised that, the technical side of it. I think that's all really, other than to say a huge thank you to my colleagues and friends now at this stage, because it's a really, really exciting project. And I mean, we're working together, applying for more funding. I really do think it will have achieved the objectives of SCoTENS in terms of relationship building and being the start of something. But Diane, as PI in Stranmillis, do you want to add anything to that, or?
Just very briefly, Leah, it was genuinely a pleasure. I'm very new to the world of research, so Noel has been a wonderful mentor to me as well, but it has been a real thrill and joy personally and professionally to be part of the team. And as you said, we just worked so well together. It really was a privilege, and to see it come together as it did, amazing and impactful. I use it in some of my classes as well, in college as well. So, and I see Maria's message there on the chat. So thank you for that, Maria. But yes, it was a real pleasure, and certainly I'm excited to continue my research journey. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both, Leah and Diane, there for those few words and insights into your report. So we look forward to making the reports available on the website so everyone can read them. And of course, congratulations on your article as well. And good luck with taking this forward. And who knows what we'll build out of all these partnerships and collaborations, but something creative is guaranteed. So at this point, we move on towards the end of our afternoon with an opportunity for anyone considering applying for next year to ask any questions that they're not too sure about, or that we may be able to help you with.
And again, can I just check with Tricia? Tricia, I'm not sure, can the panelists actually unmute and ask it? Or I just don't appear to have, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm not as familiar with Zoom as I am with Teams. I declared that earlier beforehand. I know you can pop them in the chat, but I can't actually see a hands up or whatever. So I'm just double checking if we can actually, if they can unmute and we can hear them.
Yes, if people put up their hand, I'll be able to unmute them.
Tricia, thanks so much.
Or I have asked to put any questions in the Q&A box. We haven't had any in yet. So.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Right, okay.
That's super. So again, just to open it to the floor and say again, a huge thank you for, I know I've been inspired even more by listening to the various stories, but if you have any questions on that, you actually have a wealth of knowledge here. I'm sure many of the panelists would be happy if you're looking for some information from that perspective, or something specific to SCoTENS and to your application for the seed funding. Please feel free to pop up a question, pop up your hand and Tricia will unmute you, or pop it in the chat. We'd only be too delighted to answer them for you.
Maybe in one of these little hiatuses of silence, I will ask a question. I am curious to know if in all of these very rich collaborations, if you happen to know each other beforehand, or did anyone use the facility that Tricia offers on the website for people to actually, you know, write in about what they'd like to work on and to look for a partner, or was it through your own personal networks?
I'd known Jones before from another SCoTENS project that I wasn't one of the researchers on, but they had used an Adelphi model and had I was one of the participants. So SCoTENS does make connections, definitely.
So it looks like just through your own personal networks, really, rather than through the main system. But I think some people are very fortunate in that way, and that they can just flag up that they're interested in something, and it can be just all the encouragement that someone needs.
And just while we're waiting for questions to come in, if you have a chance, perhaps if you're like me, it takes me a while to percolate. Maybe the ideas are going through your head at the moment. But if you go onto the website and look specifically at the seed funding space, you'll see you've got a number of options there. And one is if you have an idea and you're looking for a partner, you can put in that information. And other people who actually maybe don't particularly have an idea or have one and wonder who else is looking for a partner can actually go in and link up. So there is a space there where you can either say, here's my idea, would somebody like to join me? Or you can actually scan all of those and say, oh God, that sounds great. I'd actually love that. So it's a way of actually matching you up, Noel, as opposed to the Malahide Hotel. It's a slightly different version than we had before, but it's an online version or a way of actually letting you link up with people. And again, what I know myself, what I've done is I've, you know, in the past emailed a colleague that I've got to know through SCoTENS in a different institution and said, do you know anybody in your institution who might be interested in the following? So that personal is a great way as well. So any or all of those are key. And I think we have a question here from Barbara. In terms of partners, are projects with more than one partner, multiple partners, looked upon more favourably than those with just one partner north and one partner south? Well, I think, as I'll maybe start that one and ask my colleagues to come in. No, a requirement is there must be one partner north, and there must be one partner south, and that's kind of a prerequisite. Mm-hmm. And after that, then, if there are 6 partners or 7 or 2, as far as I'm say from my own recollection, bigger or smaller projects, really, there isn't a weighting on those per se. I don't know if Noel or Gabrielle would like to come in on that, or.
Well, I think that you would have noticed among the 6 speakers that there was quite a range
Yeah.
That included partnerships where there were 2 individuals, one based in an institution in the north and one in the south, and also significantly larger partnerships. So really you just want to be sure that there's a reason why, you know, it's not to tick boxes or anything, that there is a role, that people do bring different expertise, and also to acknowledge that some people are coming and their experience is, you know, not quite as developed, and that's absolutely amazing, because they can, you know, there's capacity building and the chance to work and to learn from one another, and they have a lot to offer. So that diversity, you know, among the partners is very good.
Yeah, I would just add to that. And I mean, as you've heard, often it's an opportunity for less experienced researchers to join with a more experienced researcher, even from their own institution, and to learn and be mentored and so on. And I think we have certainly seen that quite a lot over the years in Stranmillis. And so it's in answer to Barbara's question, there's certainly no formal scoring on that process at all. I mean, they're judged on merit, irrespective of the number of partners, I think is the official answer. But it is an opportunity for you to engage with more than one partner, and many of our recipients do that.
And just to add to that as well, and I know it wasn't linked to your question per se, Barbara, but other people might find it of interest. Again, as we've heard, we've had some people who are quite experienced researchers and people who are new to the field of research applying. So to take cognizance of that, this year as well, we've also put a notice up there in the seed funding that sometimes to get your toe in the water, people might like to organise an event, should we say, like a little mini conference or whatever, and you may actually evaluate that. And that could be like step 1 in beginning the research process. It may not be as daunting as going for another. Funding for that would be lesser. But again, the details are up on the website. But that it might be a way to actually initiate a partnership and just get your toe in the water and say, I'd love to begin to try something and to begin that collaborative process. And it may be a little less daunting than going into a full-fledged or whatever. So there's scope for that as well, and the details are up there.
Maria, Melanie has a question there.
Oh, brilliant. Melanie, yes.
Thank you. Well, it's more, I suppose, a comment and to add to what Gabrielle and Noel have said there. So obviously the project we're involved in is slightly different perhaps to previous SCoTENS projects. So the inclusion, and Glenda mentioned this as well, the inclusion of a research advisory team, you know, within the project certainly is really, really beneficial. I mentioned at the outset the value of having a really good research assistant, which again, you know, I stand by that. But the research advisory team has been very beneficial to both, I think, of the Shared Islands SCoTENS projects, even to date, and the projects are kind of at an early enough stage. Julie and I would have worked with the research advisory team on a previous project we were on, Deepen, on the Droichead programme here, and it gave us a platform to negotiate or to chat to people who've been part of that as well within teacher education. We were able to call on people again and add new people to it. So it's about the SCoTENS network expanding even further, and new people that we hadn't worked with before that we're now working with are so out of jurisdiction, people so impressed with SCoTENS as, you know, not just as an organization, but as a community. And a community of practice, north and south. So, you know, if people are looking at maybe a bigger project, I would highly recommend having a look. And in terms of getting your research advisory team, so to use a sporting analogy, you have to pick your best team, you know, to be successful, I suppose. So, you know, people who have experience in different areas, but also a diversity, and also people that you know are going to keep you in check. You know, it's very easy sometimes to get carried away with, you know, you talk about ideas percolating, Maria, and that's what happens when you're on a project, but sometimes you have to put a lid on the percolation to get on with the work. So the research advisory team is very useful in directing it and advising it and saying, no, hang on a minute, that's a little bit, you know, over the top, or no, that's a good idea. So just, I suppose that's a piece of advice even from where we're at the minute at the early stage of a project that might be useful to people.
Oh, Melanie, thanks so much for that. And again, just I suppose it's important to say at this stage, we were so delighted to form the partnership this year with the Shared Island Initiative. And that afforded us the opportunity to give a larger sum of money so funding for up to 25,000 per project. And that, unfortunately, in our SCoTENS piggy bank, funds aren't quite so good. So while we do have a substantial amount, we try to divide it out. The projects are usually awarded between 4,000 and 6,000 sterling. So that's the amount. Having said that, Melanie, I think if we were to try, I think that notion of having the advisory supports is absolutely, it's a wonderful idea. And anytime I've had that in my own experience, it's been brilliant. There may not be in your smaller seeded funded project, the financial, I suppose, enough finance to allow you, but there is a lot of goodwill out there as well. And I think that is, for me, the lesson from that, Melanie, would be to approach a number of people. There may be a tiny amount that you can give them, you know, in respect for the effort they give you, or some people actually might be willing just to do it, you know, for thanks, you know, or for the greater good, shall we say. But I think that notion is absolutely wonderful. It really is. And thanks, Melanie, for sharing that with us.
Yeah. Maria Jones has a question.
Yes, please, Maria. Apologies.
No, sorry, Maria. I was just
gonna, Jones, apologies.
Sorry, it's okay. I was just going to add really to Aideen's point in the chat there that it's such a nurturing organisation. But in a sense, just listening to people today, what struck me, and it relates to the projects that I've been involved in SCoTENS, is that one of the challenges is perhaps where we are dealing with misunderstanding in terms of even concepts or terms. And just to give you an example here, in terms of, you know, projects that might be thinking of going ahead, where in the South we use a term called multi-denominational, where our Northern teacher students were saying, what do you mean by that? And we're say in the North, people were using the term control school, and our teacher students in the South were going, what do you mean by that? And it was really a great process of clarification, but it took some time to actually understand each other in terms even of the language we were using around our education systems. And once we got to that point, it was much easier, but it did take quite a while. And that was something that struck me, you know, the challenge of that sometimes in terms of understanding each other, and even the language we're using around education sometimes can be quite distinct and different across border.
We spent quite a lot of time building those relationships before we could actually get to the point where productive research was going to come out of it. That was very much part of our methodology, and we used community conversations approach that Jessica Bates and Nina O'Connor had designed to try and help develop that. So I think that the relationship part of your ethos and what you fund is really significant and important, and I don't think there is an equivalent out there in any other research organisation, even in the international scale, never mind within these islands. So I think that's something that's really unique, and you should, you know, really put that front and centre of how important it is in how you do business.
Great, thanks very much. And I see two further questions have come in. Barbara again. Are there criteria which are used to evaluate each application? I can't see them on the website. Barbara, you're correct, there are a set of criteria, and there's a subgroup that meet, I think we have 6 people on that subgroup. And just to let you know, like each year we'd usually get between 30 plus to 40 applications. It's quite a substantial number, and unfortunately the pool of money we have is limited, and it is dreadful. Every year we're only in a position to maybe fund 6 or 7 depending on that, or 5 if there are 5 bigger projects, and we feel really bad in not being able to fund the 30 to 40 that are submitted. But yes, absolutely, the criteria are there, and the panel go through them each rigorously, and then they bring it to the committee and tease out the findings, etc. and that. And I see our pilot interventions considered. Yes, again, to have a think about that, that might fit better under maybe one of the smaller projects, if it's a toe in the water per se, or as a fully fledged project, absolutely. But again, have a look at the website on that and tease it out a little bit more, and don't be afraid to get in touch with us if you want any other clarification on that. So I'm conscious of the time as well, but we have scope for another 1 or 2 if anybody would like to ask anything else. Tricia, are there any hands up there that we might have missed?
No, Maria, we have answered all.
Yeah, you're just perfect for timing, actually, Maria.
Question piece. One quick question. We have one here. What piece of advice would experienced detectors tell their younger self? And that great Leah's come in. Karen, my advice would be, again, around those make connections, build relationships, etc., etc. fully, I would agree that, and I would say don't be afraid to ask, even within your own institution. It can be daunting, but I think from speaking to people in the past too, sometimes it's easier to be a beginner with people who are not in your own institution. And that I've heard people say that in the past, that actually they find it easier sometimes to have that open conversation with somebody. And I think SCoTENS can often provide that space where it's okay not to know, because we're learning together and we're sharing ideas together. And that's why we call it a safe space, where you can actually do that and learn. That would have been something I'd have heard over the years, people saying, I love that you can actually, you know, go in as a novice or a new researcher. And to that, and I think that the spirit or the nature of SCoTENS is that we're actually, everybody's open to that. Anybody who takes part, you know, in the research, we're all here to learn. I think, you know, if you look back at the conversations earlier, Conor, you said that it's a learning experience as well as research. We're all in it to learn from each other, and everybody brings a perspective. So if there's nothing else, I think, and again, please do get in touch with us if we haven't. I don't want to cut anybody off, but I'm conscious of your time as well. Just to finish by saying, first of all, a huge thank you to the Centre for Cross-Border Studies. We were talking to her, we have wonderful people there, including Anthony and Tricia, who do incredible work behind the scenes. And without them, none of this would be able to run as smoothly as it does. So a huge thank you to both of them. To all my colleagues on the SCoTENS committee, who again do Trojan work. And I said, we were telling Linda earlier, we had our new student-teacher exchange van last week. There were 4 nights, 4 hours, and people gave up their time and willingness. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. So a huge thank you to all on the committee. And really importantly, a huge thank you to all of you, part of the SCoTENS family. And hopefully, if you aren't, you will become part of the SCoTENS family and that network. Thank you for coming and for sharing. Thank you for posing your questions. And we look forward to working with you and learning from you in the future going forward. So stay safe, everybody, in these such unusual times and such strange times. Take care and mind yourselves. And let's, all I can say is let's hope that safe space, other people get to experience it who maybe aren't in a safe space at the moment. Take care, everybody, and mind yourselves. All the best.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.